Well, here we are again, folks. It's Brother Peter. It's February 2nd, daily devotion. And I've been doing this devotion from some writings of a man by the name of Floyd Philpott. He said, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," Genesis 1:1. This is called a creation fact, that God spoke into existence everything there is out here. It would stand to anybody's reason or intellect that nothing could just evolve. This is a pencil. If I laid it down here on a table and nobody touched it for the next 1,000 years, it will still be a pencil. It will not evolve into an ink pen. It will not evolve into anything but dust. From dust it came, it could go back to dust. And from dust everything came, and God spoke it into existence, and one day it's going back to dust. But God has the ability to take the dust and use it. Do you remember when Jesus was walking across the earth? There was a blind man that needed an eyeball. Jesus reached down and picked up some clay, some dust, and spit in it, rolled it around in his hand, put it in the man's head, and the man had a new eye. Jesus made the eye. Jesus made the first eyes. He was with God when God spoke and said, "I shall make man in our own image." And because of that, mankind came from God. If you think it just evolved, that the trees make air, that man breathes, and it's perfect, you think that is just a happening? Why, you'd have to have something wrong up here to think that was just a happening. It took a God. It took a supreme being to make everything work as it does. For this earth to go around the sun every 12 hours. Otherwise it would be one big ball of ice, or be like other planets that have nothing on them. Some are burning up with fire, some are freezing with ice. So this earth has a 24-hour cycle that causes it to flourish. God put all of that in sync, and then he put mankind on this earth. He put the food that's on this earth for man to eat. Wouldn't it have been something if he had made an earth with no food and made man that had to eat food? And so this is a fact that we have in Genesis 1:1. Let's look at an alert analysis. A college freshman went to visit his grandfather, who was a devout Christian. And he says, "Grandfather," he said, "I have come to believe the story of creation. As recorded in the Bible is a myth. According to scientific research, all components of this planet have evolved through billions of years. And man has come from a much lower form of life." He's telling this to his grandfather, this little educated boy. He said, "You see, in the beginning, protons and electrons were swimming around in a vast sea of nothingness, and accidentally united to form a single cell. And this living cell divided and reproduced itself until the simplest form of life was established. And from this primary living matter, more complex beings such as plants and animals and man himself emerged." Well, the old man gently listened to this young man attentively while the boy presented his impressive assemblage of information he had gathered at the university. I got news for you. It's still being taught today by empty people, by people that are empty of anything spiritual. They're empty of anything good. They're empty of anything nice. They're empty of anything sensible. They're empty. Now the student was pleased that his grandfather appeared to comprehend the concept which was being introduced to him. With a broad, satisfied smile, he concluded, "Well then, grandfather, you agree that it is absurd to suppose that one day God made a great mud pie and called it man?" Now we're going to hear the reply. Well, the old man sat silently, contemplating what he had heard. Then he pointed to a plate of cookies on the table in front of the boy. He said, "Son, would you accept the promise that those cookies evolved?" He said. That those evolved? He said, "Of course not," laughed his grandson. It takes a cook to make cookies. And the old man, so it with creation, answered the old fellow. There must be a creator. Just like somebody created and made those cookies, it took a man, took a God to create. So the prayer for the day Mr. Philpott puts up here is, "Father, give me a safe self-concept capable of revealing to me the limitations of my mental capacity and those of my fellow men. Help me to fasten my faith above that which is understood by men. Amen." And the truth for the day, he says, is this: the only reasonable explanation of this world and the life that exists here is the acceptance of a supreme intelligence. Out of all the people that I've studied behind and read behind, Brother Philpott has brought out some things that God showed me. This is a little man out of the backwoods in Kentucky. I'm a little man out of the state of Maine. One of the littlest states in the Union, one of the most misthought of states. People say, can anything good come out of Maine? A bunch of hicks up there? Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff comes out of Maine. Did you know that Maine is one of the lowest paid states in all of the United States? And the people live comfortably all of the seasons of the year. They know how to live in freezing cold with 6 feet of snow and no way to get out and stay warm, have enough food to live on, and not work for another person. They work for themselves. They are self-engineered people. They do things from their own house, from their own self. They build and they make and they write and they do things. And they support themselves. I lived in Maine for years and worked for myself. And you can do that. And Maine people do. I can remember just a few years back, I went to visit one of my old friends up there. Wintertime. He's out in the shed splitting shingles. So what are you doing? He said, I'm splitting shingles, put some new siding on, put a new roof on. They still have wooden shingles on their houses, on their roofs and whatever. When do they make them? They make them in the wintertime when they're down and they're not doing something. Well, what do they do in the summer? They grow a garden, they put up fruit, they put up vegetables, they put stuff up for the winter. They go out and they kill meat and hang it up where it's freezing cold. I used to get a lot of flack from people. I told them my father-in-law had a rabbit tree. Had a tree out in front of the house. They had rabbits hanging in it and ducks and all kinds of animals and meat for the winter time. Now it's got up there to where the winters aren't like they used to be, but when I was young, the winters got cold and stayed cold all winter. You could freeze stuff outdoors and hang it. But anyway, I'm studying behind the Bible right now called the Ford Philpott Bible. This man put this King James Version together, and he put a set of notes in it, in the front of it, and 48 pages of notes. And I'm studying behind another man called David Jeremiah. You find David Jeremiah's website, you'll find an inexhaustible website. What you want to know about angels? This man has broke down all about angels. Everything. You want to know about an angel? You look it up. David Jeremiah has got the best on it. And then there are other men. Just a plain out King James Version printed by Nelson, a World Bible, reference Bible with a concordance. And that means it's got, in the New Testament, has red writing. Where the red writing is what? The words that Jesus said himself. And the black writing is the words that God gave other people. This has a center reference, and in the center reference, it shows you in the beginning of it, here, how to use the center reference. It has little circles around stuff, and it points to a center reference. So you read a scripture, and if you want to study it, you actually break down to where the first time that thing was mentioned, and the last time it was mentioned, who said it, where they said it, why they said it, and all about it. And so you can actually dissect in just a little bitty study Bible like this one. You can dissect more than you could ever study. You couldn't live long enough to exhaust this Bible. And I can show you that, in fact, by this Bible right here. Now this Bible is called a Dake, and it's put out by Mr. Dake. And Mr. Dake went further than somebody did in this little one right here. Mr. Dake's got some 900,000 things in this one. Every page of this Bible, I have studied every single page in this Bible. I have studied his references. I've studied his notes. I've studied the thing. They say, how much of that can you maintain, Brother Peter? Well, there's much of it I don't maintain, but when I need something, I can go to it. Now, I can turn to any page in this Bible right here, and I've marked it. It's marked up all the way through, every page in it, and I've studied the footnotes and the side notes. Well, how much of that do you maintain? You can only maintain what God would have you maintain to come back with. And so this is one of the study Bibles I have been through. And then through my little trek of life since 1972 when I got saved and had an 8th grade education, I now have a certificate of theology, of Bible theology. And even though I can't spell, I didn't quit. I didn't quit. I've had to learn how to get through. This is called a Salem Curvin Bible. I recommend this to anybody, especially anybody of Arabian descent. This is an Arabian man put this Bible out, and all of his words are from the King James Version, but his side notes and his footnotes are from the mind of an Arabian man who got saved, and he sees very great, very great. Now, I have marked this Bible pretty much through, and I have studied it and used it and wore it down and preached out of it. I have about 7 or 8 of these that are wore out, that are literally coming apart, where I preached in the prison and in the jails over the years, in bus ministries and on the street corner and over, and God has blessed it. This is about a book I recommend. Highly recommend this book. This is called Wilmington's Guide to the Bible. I have this book right here. I have got every page in it marked. I have studied it. I have worked in it. I got my degree from it. And this is here. I've been through it. I can prove I've been through it. Everybody says, Peter, why do you mark your books up like that? Why you do that? Well, I was born a liar. I lived a liar for 30 years. And I was a liar. And I lied to myself and I lied to everybody else. So I want to prove to my own self that when I say I did something, I did it. And so I can open this up and prove that I did it, that I've been through it, that I studied it, that I did tests on it, and I got ranked on it, and I got the certificate to prove it. And then I got another thing right here. I've got 2 of these 5-year bus rides with J. Vernon McGee, going through the Bible in 5 years. I've got 2 of these 5-year guides of going through the Bible with J. Vernon McGee on there. And then this one right here I have is a nice one too. It's like J. Vernon McGee, but it's not J. Vernon McGee. And let me see if I can get my brain who this was that we went through. I've got it and I know it and I study behind him all the time. And I can't get him in my head, but this is was a good study, a 5-year study book, and that you can do. And I've got perhaps 100 more like it. I have literally hundreds of study books. Every one of my study books come from the King James Version. You say, how many Bibles do you have, Peter, in your repertoire upstairs? I got dozens and dozens of Bibles put out by different people that are different versions, and I can go to them and show you the fallacy of what they say when they change a word. An eye is an eye. You can call it anything you want. It's still an eye. And you need to be careful when you're writing down things that you write them down so that they're not changed, that you haven't changed them in there. The physical man was created because these are morning things that I'm doing right here. I'm going to try to keep them down to a minimum and of like 20 to 30 minutes. So you can do them if because you got your telephone and you're on the YouTube and you're watching PH Tidbits on the YouTube or listening to it. You can listen to it on your way to work. Especially if you've got an hour drive, you can take 30 minutes of your hour and listen to one of these tidbits. Physical man was created by God. There's no such a thing as evolution. And physical man, he said, dust thou art, and dust thou shalt return. Genesis 3:19. The difference is after we were made, we were given a living soul. The soul is going to live forever somewhere, either in heaven or in hell. The soul is the eternal part of man. His physical body came from dust and is going back to dust. And so, but physical man is created. A human body is a composite of millions of little miracles, all put together by God. Listen. The best scientists in the world with the biggest telescope learns more and more about God. The best biologist in the world with a microscope learns more and more about God. It doesn't matter which direction you go. It's all about God. You can go to the biggest, and that's God. You can go to the littlest, and that's God. Look at the atom. Split the atom. Make a bomb out of the atom. Make all these things are held together by atoms. You buzz some of this stuff, go bzzz with something, and it can just crumble. You buzz the earth, it just crumbles. You wet the earth down, and it solidifies and turns into liquid, just mud. I had one time here in the yard, I had some bricks that were out of the 1800s or earlier even, and I said to somebody, these are made with red mud. I put one in a 5-gallon bucket of water and let it set for a couple of weeks. Went out there and stirred it up. The brick was gone. What did I have? I had red water. What happened? The brick dissolved in the water. And that was, it had been pressed together and made into a brick. But when you soaked it in water, it disappeared. And that's the way God is. He holds things together. He made things. He made things that he made. Now somebody else said, well, I can make dirt. Well, the only way you can make dirt is take a shovel and dig some of God's dirt up. Yeah, because it's God's dirt, it ain't your dirt. You can't make it, he made it. So listen, our bodies are 60% water. Think about it. And you think this thing evolved? It's too complex. It is too complex to have evolved, and the system would be too complex to have ever happened anyway, when it's so much simpler to believe that God just made it. And he made it out of the dust of the earth. 60% water. Chemically speaking, we have more than 20 different minerals, including enough calcium to make 7 pounds of lime, and enough iron to make a good-sized nail. Hey, Ford Philpott wrote this, and I got to tell you, he's probably one of the most intelligent men that ever walked on 2 feet when it comes to Bible knowledge and it comes to the knowledge of things that you need to know. Physical life is a relative thing based on whether or not man obeys the laws of nature. Nourishment. We have to have nourishment. Water. We have to have oxygen. Most of us consumed regularly. Exercise and rest are essential. If we are denied water for a long period of time, we die of thirst. If we fall into a lake and swallow too much water, we drown. However, the laws of nature do not explain the miracles of sight. The laws of nature don't explain this miracle of sight. You know, we've got a man in our church that got both of his retinas knocked off. And right till today, doctors don't know how he can see, but he sees. He can see bad, probably better than I can, and he's in this condition. God has done miracles. The miracle of sight. The miracle of breath. A pair of lungs that take air and make the whole body work from that air. You cut that air off and you got a dead body. Hearing. We can hear. 2 ears and we don't hear double. We hear single. 2 nostrils and we breathe single. Isn't that something? We got breathing, we got hearing, we got touch. We touch things. And we can tell many things by touching them. We got reproduction or any other facet of physical life. It's all a mysterious phenomenon that man can't begin to explain. Man can't even explain man. Every scientist, every physicist, every doctor, every human being has come to a place where he can't answer the question. And God is there to say, you don't have to answer it. Just believe I did it. I did it. That's all. I'm too far above you for you to understand all of it. You just go with it. The fact that man exists is proof that at some point in time he came into being. How did this happen? Some scholars insist that man is a result of a complex merger of cells that occurred quite by accident. But the meticulous design of the human body denies the probability of accidental evolution. Genesis 2:7 says, "And the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground." You know what this means? That means the intelligence and everything that God put in a man, God put it there. That the intelligence behind the universe created physical man from the same elements he used to create the earth itself. 3 facts prove this as a true to be true. First, laboratory tests can reduce the body to about $3 worth of ordinary materials found in the earth. How about that? You're worth about $3 worth of materials in the earth. The writer of the book of Genesis had no scientific knowledge of mineral composition of man because such discoveries had not been made. The information came to man from God. Second, death brings physical decay and the body does return to dust as God said it would. Genesis 3:19, and there's no stopping that. Even the mummies that were mummified in Egypt, when you bring them out into the air, they disintegrate. God allowed me to go over there and visit Egypt and visit the Holy Lands. And while I was there, I saw some things. I saw a mummy that while the body was dead and mummified, that on the outside of that mummy was a big old long piece of hair. And I said to the fellow, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, the body died, but the hair grew until the body was done decaying." How about that? And the body still grew in that there. It said, "Finally, it is utterly impossible for man to take a proper proportion of these minerals and create anything similar to a human body." Oh, they're fooling with genetics today, but they're also fooling with the devil today. And the devil's taking some of God's things today and putting them together and creating things that aren't supposed to be created. I tell you what, this engineered food, when you read a can today, it makes me feel bad to read a can today and it said, "some engineered food." I don't like that. I don't like that. Anything that God didn't engineer, that man engineers, I ain't real happy about. So we got to be careful. But we're down now finally to where death and physical decay in the body does return to dust. God said it would, Genesis 3:19. Finally, it is utterly impossible for man to take the proper proportion of these minerals and create anything similar to a body. Our prayer for today, and this is Mr. Philport's book, remember this, is this day when the world labors to be removed evidence of God influence in the creation of all things. Help me to accept the fact that I am a divine creation. Amen, he said. And the truth for the day is man is a creation and not an accident. God allowed me, a dummy, with 8th grade education who can't spell, to be able to write in a newspaper a few years ago. And I wrote in it for a couple of years. I wrote a daily piece. And I had a daily prayer in there. And I had a daily Bible reading in there. And I had the truth for the day and a prayer for the day. And then I find Mr. Philport's little 48-page thing here. And he uses the same phrases that I used in there. And I had never met Mr. Philpott or his phrases. And one of the biggest things that I found that he put in his book that I've never found anybody else other than what God revealed it to me, he revealed it to Mr. Philpott. There's 168 hours in a week. If we give 10% of that time to God, we owe 16 hours and 48 minutes to the Lord in regular Bible study, in Bible work, in putting things on, excerpts on, in doing something. We owe 16.8 hours a week to God and 10% of our time. God said 10% of every single solitary thing I've given you, I want 10% of it back. If I give you $1, I want you to give me a dime. If I give you $100, that means you give me back 10. That's 10%. You do that. I've done that. Ever since I got saved in 1972, I've done that. I live in a house insured for over $200,000 and I don't owe a penny on it. I drive 2 vehicles I don't owe a penny on. I don't owe anything. Why? Because I followed that precept. I took 10 cents out of every dollar. Matter of fact, took much, much more than that. And God's blessed me triple, double, quadruple. And because I've followed his precepts, and he's took me to where I am today. So follow God to the best of your ability, and he will honor it and do it for you. Well, our time's come and gone. We'll see you next time.